When someone freely gives his or her time to benefit others, that is a crux of volunteerism. And it is one of the pillars of community building. And in Canada, that volunteerism plays a very important life, builds up communities, building friendships. In fact, it's the heart of what makes Canada today. We have with us Jameel Mawji. That's right, isn't it?
Correct, yes, Jameel Mawji.
Who has been a volunteer since the age of 8. Incredibly, he's still going strong with this. And in fact, he's one of the principal. How would you describe it? As a blood donor, he has donated blood plasma an incredible 67 times. Right, Jamil?
Correct, yes, going for 68 tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow. That's fantastic, really. Anyway, coming to your volunteer, we'll start off with that. Your volunteer activities from the age of 8. I understand
Yes.
you were a big brother.
Yes, so within the volunteer organization within our community, as a kind of a mentor, we have a big brother position. So that's where we will kind of look after and mentor some of the younger volunteers within our community, just to help them out. Obviously, when you're starting at the age of 8, you can't really do everything yourself. So we helped them out with that. And then I was also a junior portfolio lieutenant. So all of the junior volunteers, which are usually between 8 to 12, I believe, they all kind of fell under our portfolio. So we'd be looking at, helping them, organizing them into, their different duties and different weeks. I also did some mentoring as well, where I got to, again, mentor some of the youth within our community and help them out with, whatever they might be struggling with or whatever new skills they wanted to learn.
Is this what is it? What is the junior portfolio leader means? What?
So again, with all the junior volunteers, just to help organize them. So whenever we have events within the community or just in our daily or weekly tasks of maintaining our prayer hall and helping out during prayer ceremonies. So I would oversee a lot of the junior volunteers just to make sure that, they're performing their tasks correctly, make sure that they show up whenever they're assigned to volunteer, things like that.
And you started at the age of 8. What made you do it?
You know what? Volunteering has always been a very strong pillar within our community.
It's big.
All our events that we have, they're all volunteer run, and including some larger events. For example, in Alberta, they had the Stampede Breakfast, which is completely 100% volunteer run, and they will cook breakfast for the community as a whole, not just the Smileys, but anyone who decides to show up that day and get a meal, which is great. Um, Even with the Smiley Civic, which is again another group that was created. So this group started in 2017. It was the 50th anniversary of our spiritual leader, and to kind of celebrate and commemorate that 50th anniversary, the Canadian Ismailis pledged 1 million hours of volunteering essentially throughout our community.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been great. So we've been in food banks to help distribute food, particularly during Ramadan, which actually just happened, I guess, about a month ago. So we'd volunteer in food banks to help out with that. Um, Especially at this time, we've also been volunteering to, feed some of the frontline workers because obviously things have been a little crazy then. We've also been supplying face masks to a lot of frontline workers as well, to help them out. Every year, we have multiple events where we kind of work with the Aga Khan Development Network, which is responsible for many initiatives, non-denominational initiatives all over the world. So Central Asia, for example, there's quite a bit. Every year we have the World Partnership Walk, which raises money to help, it's either feeding children in Africa, for example, or helping educate women. There's usually a different.
Have you been to any of these places outside Canada?
Yeah, I've been fortunate. I have been able to travel bits of the world. So my parents are originally from East Africa in Tanzania.
Mm,
And I was really lucky that just before I went to university, I got to go and actually see my dad's like home that he grew up in,
I
and see
see.
my mom's home that she grew up in. And you see the environment that, you know, your parents were raised. And so, you know, you usually hear stories of you know how they grew up, and you know maybe some of them weren't as well off as others, kind of thing. And so you got to see how they grew up and really get a sense of what they've accomplished, or even what they gave up in order to give us a better life, you know, as the next generation.
Mm.
And my parents have always kind of instilled that value that, you know, help others as much as you can. It doesn't really matter whether they're, you know, next door or like across the world. If you're able to help people, then you should do that. And so I've been trying to do that. And as you mentioned with the platelets and blood donation, that's been a really interesting experience for me personally.
Because I mean, Canadian Blood Services, I mean, they have great slogan, you know, that two slogans. Together, we are Canada's lifeline. It's so incredible, isn't it? Wonderful. And
Exactly.
blood, it's in you to give.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're
Um,
doing it so nicely. Very good.
it's great, and I think it's one of the most selfless things that someone can do, because you're giving of yourself, like, you know, whether it's your blood or plasma or platelets, you're donating essentially part of your body to someone who you have no idea who they are or where they are, but obviously they're in need, and you get to help them out specifically, which I think is great. And I mean, at the end of the day, you get your little bag of cookies and you get to feel good, but for me, it's just helping someone else out who's in need, right?
When did you start donating blood?
I actually started donating blood when I was in university. They had a blood donor clinic set up in one of the campus buildings, and between my classes, I had a little time, and I came across it, and that was the first time I ever donated blood. So I started donating blood through that, and my initial goal was actually just to get 100 donations, um, which was, I guess, kind of a lofty goal, because you can only donate every 8 weeks.
Or
So it
four,
would take
five
like,
times, 4 or 5 times a year or more?
yeah, I think it's about 5 or 6 times a year or
Yeah.
something like that. So I mean, if you think about it, you're be donating for well over a decade to try and hit that 100 donation goal. Um, my blood type is AB positive, which isn't the greatest for donating blood, but I learned that it's actually a universal donor for donating platelets, which has been great. Platelets, I'm not too sure if you're familiar with, but it's what's responsible for
Protein,
clotting our
or
blood.
the protein rich part of the blood, yes.
Exactly, yeah. And usually platelet recipients are typically leukemia patients.
Hmm.
That particularly resonated with me. I had a close friend of mine pass away from cancer about 5 years ago. And just to see what he went through, and I felt a little helpless at the time, because, you know, you want to help him so much, but you know, I don't have millions of dollars for cancer research or anything like that. So the way I felt that I could help other people who were in a similar situation was to donate my platelets. And so now I try to do that. We can do that every 2 weeks usually. Platelets,
Very good.
they only last on the shelf for about 5 days, whereas
Yeah.
blood products can last for, you know, weeks or even months. So
But,
there's always a need. And so that's, you know, a few of the reasons that I've been donating platelets. And I think I'll hopefully pass the 100 donation goal
isn't the
soon, but
process,
I'd really love to continue beyond that for as long as I can.
is the process same as blood donation and platelet donation? Is it the
Uh,
same?
it's it's quite different actually. So typically when you go to donate blood, the needle will be in your arm for about, I don't know, let's say up to 15 minutes
Mhm.
to finish the donation. With platelets, what they do is the needle goes in your arm, it takes out blood, they put it in a centrifuge,
Coagulate.
extract,
Yeah.
yeah, extract the platelets, and then pump the rest of the blood back into you.
Why?
Uh, that process, usually for a donation, takes me about 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm usually sitting there for an hour and a half with
Yeah.
the needle in my arm to donate. So it's a bit more time. They also don't have a lot of platelet donation centers. I'm fortunate enough that we have one in downtown at College and Bay, but I think there's only maybe about a handful in all of Ontario versus blood donor clinics, which we have. We're lucky to have a lot, especially in the Toronto area. Um, but yeah, like the platelets is interesting. It's on top of all the criteria you have to donate blood. Um, Platelets, there's more strict criteria. Like uh, you can't donate platelets if you've ever been pregnant.
Okay.
Yeah, which is an odd one. You have to have a certain level of platelet count and certain weight and height and things like that. So the criteria is a little more strict. So again, I feel fortunate that I check all that criteria, and it's nice. I get a call sometimes saying, we have a patient who's in need. Can you come in and donate? And so that for like it's hard to say no to requests like
Yeah.
that.
And I think
So,
you have a degree in biomedical computing. Eh? What's that now?
so that was an interesting program that was offered by Queen's University. I believe it's still offered by Queen's University. It was kind of a cross between life sciences and computer sciences, which were my two interests at the time when I was entering university. So I finished my degree in that. I didn't really end up pursuing anything biomedical after I graduated, um, but it's still an interest of mine. So I'll dabble here and there and read up on things or try and learn new things.
Yeah. And you're after all this, and you're also a sports personality. You've been playing hockey and volleyball.
Yeah, it's been great. While I was in university, I was able to volunteer with a few organizations there. So I was running a couple intramural volleyball teams. I was on the board for the Queens like ball hockey league, which was great. One of the cool things we did with that was we actually had a world record attempt for longest ball hockey tournament or
When
like consecutive games.
Canada?
Yeah, in Canada, yeah. So I think we had played for 40 hours or
Oh,
something like that. Yeah, which was really nice. But sports for me has always been, both a social thing where you get to go and meet people, but also for your own personal health, just to get out and be active. Lately, I've been playing a lot of what we call traditional volleyball, which is kind of a variation on regular bum set spike volleyball that came from East Africa, but is played all over the globe. And so my team, a couple of years ago, actually in April, we were in a tournament in New York against, I think it was 25 other teams from all over the world, most of them from North America, and we actually came away with the championship, which was great. But we usually play. There's usually maybe like two or three tournaments throughout the year, like all over North America. We'll try and travel and play. There's some that are local as well, which is great. But yeah, it's helped me keep active, and obviously I get to see my friends and play a sport, so it works out well.
but after all this, you find time for community activities. Eh?
Yeah, you know what? Like it's almost hard to say no sometimes just because of all the initiatives that we have. It's very easy for people to find a way that they like get some fulfillment in donating and actually or enjoy volunteering. One of the initiatives that we're starting up is to actually help out with the Kids Help Phone, which is
You want something new?
yeah, that's a new initiative that we're hopefully starting soon. Where Kids Help Phone, I'm sure you might have seen them on the sides of like milk cartons and things like that. So we're hoping to be able to volunteer with them as well. We've had garbage pickups, for people who enjoy that sort of thing. There's a lot of volunteering within our community to help out the elderly. So there's always something that you can enjoy doing and do it, which is great. And I feel like you almost have to. We're very fortunate to be living in a society that where we have running tap water. Most of us have roofs over our head. And so to give back to those to people who may not have that is something that I think is really important.
What are the main areas where Canada needs volunteers? What do you think?
Oh wow, that's a good question. It's I think volunteerism it's been amazing to see the amount of work that can get done when you have a lot of people all focusing on the same goal. Right now, there's a lot of issues with I guess the elderly in our community. So helping out with that is great. Obviously the food donations and food banks are great. They're always looking for volunteers and even donations as well, for people who might not be able to necessarily volunteer their time and can instead offer their resources. But there's so many opportunities again within society, whether it's within your own community or outside of the community to give back. And again, if possible, it's great to do it in a way that helps out, the broader community, not necessarily just your own or your neighbors kind of thing. So, if people haven't volunteered, I strongly suggest they find something they're passionate about, and I'm sure they can find an outlet where, they need volunteers to help out with that, whether it's to run sports tournaments or, look after people or clean up, or a lot of us possess special skills that, various charities or whatnot would be looking for.
What do you enjoy the most? Very
Oh,
good.
that's a good question. For me, sports has always been a big part of my life. So, if I can volunteer while playing sports or being around sports, I've always enjoyed that. Again, playlists for me has now become a pretty often thing. I'll try and do that as much as I can. Every 2 weeks, I almost have a running appointment. But there's always opportunities, even just helping out your neighbor, or shoveling someone else's driveway across the street. It's all the small things, and it's not necessarily about the pats on the back or getting any publicity from it, but hopefully you get some fulfillment from that yourself and enjoy, helping someone else, and then hopefully they pay it forward. It might come around back to you. Who knows, right?
And I think seeing your work, I think many others must be following you, isn't it? Youngsters.
Yeah, it's humbling to see the volunteerism amongst my community as well. So, you mentioned that I'd done 67 donations and going for 68 tomorrow, but I'll bump into people who have done 150, 200 donations. And so you look at that and you think that you're not really doing much, but every little bit helps, right? If next time you're going for a blood donation, if you take a friend, that's a whole other life that gets saved potentially. And hopefully it kind of snowballs like that. So it doesn't really matter how big, how small. Some people are doing it more in the limelight. Some people are more behind the scenes. But every little bit helps.
I mean, the Ismaili community is, of course, very famous for its community work.
Yeah,
social work, yeah.
exactly. And like I mentioned with the Aga Khan Development Network, one of the things I really appreciate about their work is that it is non-denominational. So we're not only helping the Ismailis or the Muslims in a particular area, right? We'll look at helping out entire communities and try to uplift everybody, because, if I make myself great or only the Ismailis great, but the rest of the people around are suffering, then it's really hard to make an impact. So in that sense, I think the Ismailis, and it's not to say that only the Ismailis are doing that. Like, you see a lot of volunteerism from a lot of other communities, like the Sikh community I've heard is doing, helping out a lot of people that, might not have a meal, for example. There's a lot of opportunities, but I think to do it for everybody is ideal. Yeah.
Have you been to India?
India is still on my my bucket list.
The Ismaili community is huge in India too, very big.
Yeah, you know what? We have a large community in India. There's a lot of people in the UK, in the
Asia.
US, in China. In that sense, we're pretty blessed to have people all over the world, and they're all each doing their own thing. I'm hoping to go to India one day. My ancestors are from India, so it'd be great to see what back home is like. Even my wife, her family is from India as well. So I think she may have gone, but it's definitely on our list of places to go. But even if it's not India, there's plenty of places around the world where you can learn something from the culture, or get something new, a new perspective. So whether you're traveling back home or Southeast Asia or anywhere, anywhere you can get outside of Canada, outside of our little bubble is great.
Anything particular you would like to tell our viewers, Jameel?
Oi. I think at this time, especially with what's going on in the world right now, there's a lot of people who need help, and they may not say they need help, but if you are in a position to give, whether it's some of your time or some of your resources, do it. We all have a little extra time on our hands, maybe, and it doesn't necessarily involve us, being in a large crowd or anything like that. You can volunteer just, at your laptop. But I think if we end up being there for one another more as a community, and really help each other out, I think at the end, we're all going to come out better for it.
Thanks a lot, Jameel. We have been listening to Jameel Mawji, who is an example of exemplary volunteerism, and we hope he can be inspire many others to follow in your steps.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks a lot, Jameel.
Thank you.
I think we'll get you back on one of our shows again.
Great, I'd be happy to.
There's a lot of other things to talk to you about.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thanks, Jameel.